When we think of a mother or a mother figure in media, there are a few typical traits that may come to mind. She is loving, maybe overly so at times, takes care of the home, is usually more compassionate with the children than the father figure is, and will often be the emotional core or glue of the family. It's seen as almost what women and mothers are supposed to do. But what about the lesser seen depictions? The mothers who don't uphold this idea of what a mother should be. The ones who can be cold or critical, dismissive, or even absent. This kind of depiction is the main reason for my interest in going into these movies that we're going to be talking about today, which is Lady Bird and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Now, neither of these movies are entirely about motherhood, but they are some of the main themes of both of them. There are a lot of other things to appreciate about these movies, like the acting, the editing, the music, the sound effects, but that would take a longer video to go into, and I have a time limit, so what I want to focus on for this video is the way that these two movies deal with the emotionally abusive mother. According to Jennifer Koza in her article 5 Signs of Emotional Abuse, some signs of emotional abuse can be defined as non-physical behavior that belittles another person and can include insults, put-downs, verbal threats, or other tactics that make the victim feel threatened, inferior, ashamed, or degraded. An emotionally abusive person can be manipulative. They may try many things to get you to do what they want or just to feel badly, such as withdrawing affection when you've done something quote-unquote wrong, ignoring or excluding you, guilt trips, making you doubt yourself, or denying something that you know is true. The abuser might try to play down your emotions or feelings by saying you're too sensitive or calling you crazy, making fun of your achievements or hopes or dreams, refusing to talk about or take responsibility for their actions, blaming you or someone else for their actions because it can't be their fault, and being indifferent to your feelings. In Lady Bird, we can see actions like these reflected in the titular character's mother, Marion. When Lady Bird wants to be dropped off by her father a block away from her school so her friends don't see her getting dropped off, which, if you're to think that any other high school movie is at all accurate, this seems to be a normal teen thing to do, Marion blames Lady Bird for her father's depression and calls her selfish for not realizing it herself sooner. Marion also guilt-trips Lady Bird by complaining about how much money it takes to raise her, despite the fact that it was Marion and her husband's idea to have children in the first place. No child asks to be born, so it's not the child's fault when they are born. That is on the parents. Throughout the movie, Marion takes seemingly every chance she can get to tell Lady Bird that she's too fat for a dress she likes, or she doesn't dress well, or she's too stupid to get into a school she wants to attend. All of this culminating in Lady Bird internalizing these beliefs and ultimately believing them herself. When Lady Bird goes off to college, Marion gives her the silent treatment, to the point where Lady Bird is breaking down and banging on the doors trying to get her mother to talk to her, and she still doesn't, and doesn't even go to see her off as Lady Bird boards her plane as a punishment for Lady Bird daring to go away from home, which is another normal thing for college-age teenagers. It's important to remember that throughout all of these scenes, Lady Bird is the teenager and Marion is the middle-aged parent. Even when Lady Bird is unaware of her loved ones or maybe acting selfishly, it's because she's a teenager. Teenagers cannot be held on the same level as their parents. In Everything Everywhere All at Once, Evelyn is neglectful and dismissive of how her daughter Joy feels, to the point of creating the entire conflict of the movie and the villain, and I use that term loosely, of the movie called Joputupaki because she was using her daughter as an experiment, although that specific action happens in another universe, which might not make sense if you haven't seen the movie, but I do implore you to see this. There's so much more to appreciate about it other than just the mother-daughter relationship, even if you don't have a personal connection to that story. you can still appreciate the movie. To get back to that relationship, though, the first interaction we see between Evelyn and Joy is Evelyn ignoring what Joy's trying to talk to her about as she goes about working in her laundromat. Throughout the movie, Evelyn is critical of Joy in much the same way that Marion is critical of Lady Bird, telling Joy she's getting too fat, making Joy feel like she's an ungrateful failure, being uncomfortable with and downplaying Joy's long-time relationship with another woman. In the beginning, Evelyn denies that Jobu Tupaki is her Joy and doesn't seem to accept, at least at first, that she had a part to play in any of this. The abuse of Joy from Evelyn causes Joy to come to the conclusion that life is meaningless. In Jobu Tupaki, this is because of her awareness of the universe, but in the main dimension, Joy, we can see this as a result of Evelyn's neglectful parenting. In both of these movies, there's evidence of generational trauma as well. In the case of Marion, she reveals to us and to Lady Bird that her own mother was an abusive alcoholic. With Evelyn, we see that in the past, her father disowned her as a result of getting married to a man her parents didn't approve of and moving away. Both of these insights into the mothers' lives give us a better idea of the way parental abuse can carry down through the generations and a clearer grasp of the multifaceted natures that most abusers usually have. Despite the fact that it seems more like common sense that if you were abused by your parents, then you would never want to do the same to your child, this isn't how trauma always or even usually manifests. In Verbally Abusive Mothers and Their Daughters, writer Cheryl Wozni notes, some women may feel inferior to their partners, making up for it by establishing dominance over their children. Other mothers may suffer from mental health issues, altering what they think is acceptable behavior. In addition to this, it can be because of the normalization of abuse by the victims as a result of needing to cope with a difficult lifestyle. An abuse victim can, and I know I'm sometimes guilty of this, downplay the negative effects of abuse as a possible coping mechanism, which in turn can result in thinking of this behavior as normal or acceptable. If you've never known anything else, how likely is it that you'd know better? All of this is to say that ultimately there is no excuse for emotionally abusing your child, even if you had to deal with abuse yourself growing up. It is up to us to find our own ways to heal from our trauma in order to break the cycle of abuse and form healthy relationships going forward. Both of these films deal with emotionally abusive mothers to different degrees and debatable messages by the end, depending on the movie we're talking about, but I think it's important to make and watch movies like these that can help us to understand ourselves or others who might be going through this right now or have gone through it in the past.